Welcome to a practice video on parabolas. So we're going to dive into this question, which is a matric level question. Okay, this is obviously CAPS, DEB, 2010 March, and it does come from a source online. Okay, so we've been given the two function equations, and I've highlighted the y-intercept and the x-intercepts. We are asked in the first question to find the coordinates of A and B. So A and B are the intersection with the x-axis. You can see there that parabola is intersecting with x, which we call the intercepts, okay, x-intercepts. So we are going to do that, which in order to solve for the x-intercepts, we must always let y equal 0 of the equation that is given. So we take our equation, your f of x equals minus x squared plus 7x plus 8. Okay, so basically what you're doing is you're setting this f of x to 0. Now remember that f of x is just a way of saying y, okay? So that's equivalent of just saying y is equal to. It's just another way we write y, okay? So basically these things are the same thing. Okay, so we set that to 0 and then we solve for our x value. Now remember that this is a quadratic equation, so we are going to have to solve it using that method. Okay, I'm just going to actually do this one, change the signs, which we are allowed to do. It is an equation, so basically I divide it through, or you can multiply by -1. I prefer solving an equation like this where I do not have a negative out front here. So that's why I did the second step here. So let us carry on. We are going to do our brackets now. Now remember that when you're doing this one, you've got to look at what are your factors of 8. Okay, so basically to multiply to give you 8, obviously. So 1 and 8, 2 and 4. Okay, and then we need to add these to get 7. Now this one, if I add it, I'm going to get 4, 5, 6. Okay, and then if I minus them, yeah, I'm not going to get 7. If I subtract that, like 2 minus 4, I'm going to get a negative number. Here we need to get -7. So if I set -8 plus 1, that would give me -7. So then I'm going to use the factors 1 and 8. So let's go with that. So 8 and 1. Okay, so we need -8 and plus 1. And we obviously need x and x. Okay, so we know that our x-intercepts now are at this point, we actually don't need the 0 there. I'm just going to... Okay, we're just going to set each bracket to 0. So that one like that. And then we're going to set, solve that, it becomes 8. And then the other bracket, we're going to set to 0 as well to solve. X plus 1 equals 0. X is equal to -1. Okay, so that is solving a quadratic equation. That is actually called the 0 method. I will do a video on the 0 method if you're unfamiliar with that. Okay, but that was obviously learned in grade 10, or should have been. Okay, so let's carry on. So we know that point A is that will be -1 and B will be 8. But now the problem is we have the x values. We do not have the y. But in this case, remember that we set y to 0. So essentially with the intercept, we always know that y is going to be 0. So it'll be 8 and 0. And then we know that this one will be -1 and 0. Okay. So we've got now, this is B and that is A. So that question is done. And that's 4 marks. Okay. Calculate A, the coordinates of D. Okay, so they want us to calculate A in the coordinate of D. Okay, now A is an x value. Do you see that? A is an x value. So if you go look here, they've got A as the x and B as the y value. So we are going to try and get the x coordinate of that over there. Now, whenever you have two graphs intersecting, what I mean is they're touching each other, they're going through each other. So you can see that they're going through, the straight line is going through the parabola at D and then at B. Now, what we're going to do is whenever we have intersection, so meaning we want to find the x point of the intersection, we always set the graph equations equal to each other. Okay, and why do we do this? Is because can you see that if I take my little dotted line and I go to the y value, I can see that the y values are the same. Okay, so that y value will be the same, and the x value at that point obviously will also be the same. So your coordinates will be the same. So what essentially we are saying here is we are actually saying that at that point, the y value is going to be equal for both graphs. Okay, so we are saying essentially that the y point for the parabola will be equal to the y point of the straight line. Okay, which now, in knowing that fact, we can then say, oh, well, we know that the y, remember that the y is actually the equation, because this f of x is y, okay? Remember that represents y. That represents all the y values. We know that that is that one, and then the other one will be g of x is equal to minus 3, x plus 24. So what we're saying here is f of x equals g of x. Okay, so we're going to take these equations and we are going to equate them. It's called equating, so making them equal. Right, now we are going to simplify this equation by grouping like terms. What I mean by that is obviously taking these values over to the other side, okay, of the equation. So minus 2x, and now that becomes plus 7x plus 3x plus 8 minus 24. Remember, it changes sign if it goes over an equal sign. Okay, and then we're going to solve again. 7, that should be 10x. And then our plus 8, that should be 8. Let me just double check that. 24. That's minus 16. Okay. Equals 0. Now I'm just going to change the sign again to make it, easier to solve. Because you can do that if it's an equation, but remember you cannot do that if it's an expression, okay? You can only factor out a negative. Okay, right, so we're going to solve this, and it becomes 16, so that would be 1 and 16, or 2 times 8. I'm looking at 2 times 8 here. I think that's going to work. Okay. Minus minus x and x, we know. And or x is equal to 2. Okay. So that will be where our x-intercepts are happening. So you can see that one of them was 8, which makes sense because remember that was our x, that was the intercept here. This is 8. Where b is, right? That was 8. Now the other one here would be where it is 2. It was 2. Okay, so that would be that question there. Done. So that is part 6.2. Okay, stay tuned for the rest of these questions in the second part to this video.